But when I first came here, I was just alone in this godforsaken place with nobody compatible, no gay bars, no anything. What in the world am I doing here? I thought it was quite grim, and I wasn't aware of any gay scene because there's no gay bar, and only got to know Brandy, I guess, by walking down to the post office and going in and out of all the shops along Main Street.
So how did you two meet each other?
Living up on William Street
I think we
and
just
going
met
to the
in
post
town.
office several times a day. That was one of my great activities. Was every time I thought they'd have more mail sorted, I'd wander down to the post office because that was a chance to meet people.
I think you came into the shop.
Yeah,
too.
came into
See,
the shop and
my original partner, George, died in 1964. Four. And I was left with no one. And it really took two to run the business. So I was sort of floundering for a year or two, trying to decide. And I think we got talking about that.
yeah, because I would stop in. It was a nice.
And also, I think you became ill.
Well, that was after we'd met. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
But yes, after we met. But that's when you became ill. Dr. Hoxie thought he needed to be somewhere where someone could look after him. And I think I had an idea in my mind, or maybe that would be something I should do with ulterior motives.
That was December of '66. I had salmonella poisoning and mono at the same time, and the hospital didn't want to keep me in there once they diagnosed me because the mono. I couldn't fend for myself because I was too weak. But Dr. Hoxie said, "Do you know anybody that could take care of you for a while because you're going to be sick for about a month probably anyhow. You won't be able to do much for yourself." So Brandy offered to.
I had an extra room, and I said, you could stay in my apartment. So he did, and he never left.
June '65, I started my job as the first executive director of the Vineyard Conservation Society. Remember when I came here, I was 24 years old. I was quite young. And when I met Brandy, it's a problem for me. It was probably in my head more than anything else. I had a lot of things to go to, particularly Nan Simon would always want me up there at cocktail time and have some of her friends over and discuss Conservation Society things. And that would leave Brandy alone in Vineyard Haven. Only once in a while I said something about bringing a friend along. I didn't feel comfortable in promoting the fact that we were a couple. I think all the summer people, most of them, the Up Islanders that were the big backers of the Conservation Society, I imagine would have cared less because they were quite liberal. But I could have, that's one of the reasons that I left the Conservation Society was I was finding it more and more awkward to be with Brandy and not be with Brandy and explain or not explain. And I think it's just due to my immaturity that I didn't just come out and say, well, you know, I'm with Brandy and if I'm invited someplace, I want him to be invited.
From then on, Bruce took over what George had been doing because he was very good at that sort of thing, and you know, it just worked out, and he learned the other part of the business very quickly.
When you were young, Brandy, did you know that you were gay?
Well, by young, you mean back to grammar school?
Yeah, well, when did you know?
More or less in college.
Not earlier?
Not really.
Okay.
Not actively.
At that point, was that a problem for you?
No, I had no problem ever with the subject. My main friends in Rhode Island were, the male ones were gay, so I wasn't alone. And we were good friends and we did social things together. But it wasn't any problem.
What about coming back to the vineyard?
Well, here it was different, because I never was here long enough, and I was young to establish a group of friends in my age group. So I didn't have any connection with gay life.
Well, when you moved to the island, of course, George was with you. You were a couple.
Yeah.
It took a while, I imagine, for you to find other gays.
We were all together in the art scene.
And so, Bruce, being gay for you growing up, was that ever a problem? And
No, actually, through school, even though I knew I was gay, I never saw anybody in school that I thought was gay. So I never knew there was anybody out there who was gay. During my school years, I did meet somebody older than me, and we had a time. But I filled my life with all sorts of things. The woodlands near us, it was the watershed for the reservoir. I loved riding my bike there. And I was so bored in high school that I took night courses at Brown University. But then I went on, and I was working for the Audubon Society, volunteering at all sorts of things there, plus my bird watching. My time was taken up, and I really didn't have too much time to think.
The gay scene on the Vineyard, how did it change?
Well, I think it changed without my realizing it because I had become part of it.
Young people came along and were not as closeted. Allison Shaw, Dan Waters, and they were good people for the younger kids to look up to because they had business going and they had a good head and they were good members of the community. And that was quite different.
When you look back on your life so far, Brandy,
Yeah.
what's been the most wonderful thing?
Well, I think it's the way I've managed to be lucky in finding somebody like Bruce to be my partner. It's made a great deal of difference, I'm sure, in my life. Something you don't expect, but always hope for.